This is the Airbus A380, the world's largest passenger jet, a flying cruise ship, a super jumbo amongst jumbos. It's colossal, quiet, spacious, and it's so large that if you have a window seat by the wing, you can't see anything beyond it. So one of the most impressive engineering marvels of our time was a success, right? Nope. It was a major failure, and not long ago it was headed for extinction. Airlines just couldn't wait to sell or scrap these giants, calling them basically overpriced fuel guzzlers, an engineering marvel that had arrived to a party that had, well, already moved on. It was the future of air travel, until it wasn't. But in a plot twist, the A380 is back in the skies and making news headlines. The very jet once dismissed as a $25 billion misstep is now a very large rising phoenix. So, buckle up, read the safety card, and let's see what this funny business is all about. To understand the A380's fate, we need to talk about airline route strategies. The A380 was built by Airbus for a type of flying route called the hub and spoke model, and it worked like this. Fly lots of passengers on big planes into a major hub, then transfer them onto other big planes to their final destination. It's kind of like an hourglass, many small streams of travellers converging into one big flow across the ocean, and then fanning out again. By contrast, we also have something called the point-to-point model. This skips big hub layovers and uses small, long-range jets to fly passengers directly between secondary cities. For example, instead of all going through London or Dubai, a traveller might, say, fly direct from Seattle to Manchester on a slightly smaller but very fuel-efficient two-engined airplane. Now, in the 1990s, when Airbus was still designing the A380, the hub-and-spoke model was still king. Boeing had dominated long-haul travel with its 747 Queen of the Skies, and Airbus wanted to one-up that with an even bigger queen. But Boeing took a different fork in the road. They bet on efficient twin-engine jets instead in their 787 Dreamliner, which could economically serve point-to-point routes. As luck or strategy would have it, Boeing's bet paid off, and over time, more airlines saw point-to-point as the future. It promised passengers more direct flights and airlines lower operating costs. So the A380, built for a world of consolidated mega-hub travel, was increasingly a plane out of sync with its time. So, what went wrong? Why did this mega airplane, deemed as a technological triumph, end up as a commercial flop? Well, let's explore the turbulence that the A380 hit. The first was astronomical development costs. Airbus poured roughly $25 billion into developing the A380, which was about twice the original planned budget, and then needed to sell hundreds of aircraft just to break even. In reality, only 254 were built in total, and that included test aircraft, and this is a contrast of Airbus's dreams of 1,200 sales, so they didn't even hit a quarter of their target. So the program never recouped its investment, an expensive lesson in market miscalculation. The next was high operating and maintenance costs. With 4 thirsty jet engines, the A380 drinked jet fuel. By 2015, its average operating cost was estimated at around $26,000 per hour, with $17,500 of that being fuel. Maintenance was equally hefty. More engines and components mean even higher upkeep. I mean, just look at the size of the damn thing. To make money, airlines pretty much had to fill most of those 500 plus seats available on every single flight. A half-empty A380 bleeding fuel is an airline's worst nightmare. The next problem was airport infrastructure challenges. You see, the A380 is so big that many airports just couldn't handle it. Its wingspan of almost 80 meters and double-deck configuration meant that airports needed special large gates, longer taxiways, and even strengthened tarmacs. Some major airports invested millions to accommodate the A380's bulk, from doing things like installing double-decker jet bridges to widening their entire runways. So if a route's destination airport wasn't A380 ready, well, that route was off the table. And the final hurdle was just wrong timing and a market shift. You see, the A380 started flying passengers at a very inopportune time. 2007. So straight after that came the 2008 global financial crisis, which slammed air travel demand. Airlines became allergic to risk and extra capacity, then after that oil prices started climbing, making 4-engine jets look even more like gas-guzzling relics. And critically, those airlines were pivoting to those efficient point-to-point twin-engine jets. Why funnel everyone through a hub on a 525-seat A380 when you could fly a smaller 787 or even an Airbus A350 directly with far less cost? After 2008, numerous low-cost carriers also emerged, thriving on those smaller, more efficient planes and direct routes. So the A380 was a solution to a problem that was disappearing, and things just kept getting worse. You see, by 2019, Airbus had read the writing on that hangar wall and announced an end to A380 production. The final new A380 rolled out in 2021 for Emirates, marking an official close to the super jumbo era. Then came COVID-19, which effectively was the final nail in the coffin and a mass extinction event for big jets. International travel demand collapsed overnight in 2020. So cue the bloodbath. Air France didn't waste any time. It accelerated the retirement of all of its A380s in 2020. Then German carrier Lufthansa shipped its A380s off to long-term storage, with execs hinting that they might never return. Australia's Qantas parked its A380s in the Mojave Desert's boneyards, and even Middle East giant Etihad mothballed its A380s as well. And with jet fuel prices spiking to record highs in 2022 amid global turmoil, the logic was simple. Why bring back a fuel-hungry beast when newer jets could do the job cheaper? Qatar Airways CEO even went so far as to declare the A380 would never again be economically or environmentally viable for his airline, noting it burns about 80 to 95% more fuel per hour than Airbus's own smaller and more efficient A350 on similar routes. So by early 2022, the A380 looked destined to become a very large museum piece. But then things started happening. Travel demand started surging. Many airlines frankly got caught with their pants down, or rather their planes down, by the speed of travel recovery post-pandemic. Those A380s in storage? Well, they're big, they're available, and they're already paid for. Bringing a few back was the fastest way to add hundreds of seats per flight on routes where passenger demand outstripped capacity. Then there's supply chain and new jet delays. It's not that airlines suddenly forgot about the A380's problems, it's that their shiny new replacements didn't show up on time. Boeing's new 777X program, intended as a big twin-jet successor to many airlines' A380s, has been delayed, and delayed, and delayed. Airbus's own A350 and Boeing's 787 production have also faced backlogs and slow deliveries. This aircraft shortage meant that airlines had scheduling holes and not enough seats to meet passenger demand. Rather than waiting years for new jets, bringing A380s out of the shed started to look pretty smart. In fact, Lufthansa explicitly credited delayed 777X deliveries as a key reason that it brought back all 8 of its remaining A380s. When you need a large plane yesterday, a parked A380 is your solution. Then there's leasing. Now, the A380's reputation was pretty battered. Second-hand values for these planes therefore went through the floor, so leasing one became relatively affordable for the amount of capacity that you get. Some opportunistic players saw a chance, which brings us to a fairly quirky new airline, Global Airlines. This upstart British company, founded by this guy, an entrepreneur who once visited every country on Earth, is literally betting his entire business on the A380's resurgence. Global Airlines wants to fly an all A380 fleet, but they so far have started by acquiring just one ex-China Southern A380 on the cheap. They plan to operate transatlantic flights, flying London to New York. Think 21st century Pan Am vibe, using the world's largest jet as a selling point. Whether this gamble succeeds is anyone's guess. The first flight was a few weeks ago, and the experience people had was not the most refined in the world. But Virgin Atlantic started in a very similar way many decades ago with Boeing 747s. So who knows? Then there's airport slot constraints. You see, busy international hubs like London Heathrow, New York JFK, or Tokyo have limited takeoff and landing slots, which airlines can bid for and as a result are extremely expensive. If an airline can only get one flight at prime time, they want to make it count. Flying one A380, therefore, with 500 plus people instead of, let's say, 2 smaller jets with 250 each, means that you've effectively doubled the capacity on one scarce slot. Heathrow in particular was a driving force behind the A380's design, and British Airways and others still find the A380 incredibly useful on routes where they're slot restricted and demand is high. Next, there's improved economics in certain conditions. Believe it or not, when an A380 flies completely full, its per-seat economics can actually rival smaller jets. Airbus like to boast that the A380 had an impressively low carbon footprint per passenger, roughly 75 grams of CO2 per kilometre per passenger at full capacity, which was very competitive. Now, real-world operations rarely hit those rosy numbers, but on high-density routes, say Dubai to London or Dubai to LAX, a fully loaded A380 can actually turn a profit for an airline even with a higher fuel burn. And with oil prices off their peaks by 2023 and into 2024, the fuel cost penalty for using a jumbo lessened somewhat. Now finally, there's spare parts availability. You see, one practical hurdle in resurrecting a discontinued aircraft is maintenance and parts, but here again, the A380 lucked out. During its downtime years, several A380s were scrapped for their parts. Companies like Tarmac Aerosave and Cetair parted out at least 5 of their A380s to stockpile used serviceable material, or USM. That means a readily available supply of spare engines, landing gears, and other components became available at cheaper prices. So when airlines decided to revive their A380s, they could tap into this parts pool instead of waiting for Airbus, which isn't making new A380 parts at scale anymore, which helped reduce the maintenance costs and the lead times for reactivating people's A380s. Kind of like mechanical organ donation. So, the perfect storm of market conditions gave the A380 a new lease of life. As of 2024, the once dead Super Jumbo is flying high again with British Airways, Singapore Airlines, Qatar, Korean Air, Etihad, and many more. Lufthansa went from auctioning off its A380 dinnerware to reactivating all 8 of its remaining jets. And Qantas dragged its A380s out of the Mojave Desert, refitted them, and now uses them on flagship routes to Los Angeles and London again. Each airline has its own reasons, but collectively we're witnessing an aviation comeback that very few saw coming. The A380 went from hero to zero to hero again. For now. Now, no A380 discussion is complete without talking a little bit more about Emirates, the Dubai-based carrier that practically adopted the Super Jumbo as its mascot. If the A380 is an endangered species, well, Emirates is like the wildlife conservationist trying to keep it alive. Emirates alone owns over 100 A380s, and almost half of all ever built, by far the largest fleet on the planet. Long before its resurgence, Emirates had cracked the code to profitability with this plane, using Dubai's geography to operate that aforementioned hub and spoke model in the modern age to fill all of its seats efficiently, regularly. They even pressured Airbus into building it in the first place and later into extending the program as long as possible. So during the pandemic, Emirates notably did not retire its A380s. They kept as many flying as demand allowed and just stored the rest ready for reactivation. So once the pandemic was cooling down and the border started opening, Emirates just brought back the A380s en masse, even launching flashy new cabin updates like Premium Economy on them. The airline's president, Tim Clark, remains one of the A380's loudest advocates. His view in a nutshell was that passengers love the plane, and if you can fill it, well, it's a moneymaker. And Emirates A380s often sport things like showers and lounges, for first and business class of course, not as economy peasants, and a 9 abreast economy that's relatively comfortable thanks to the cabin's wide width. So for them, the A380 isn't just a plane, it's actually part of their brand. Their marketing highlights the A380 experience, and travellers literally plan trips to fly on Emirates A380 with that famous onboard bar. I mean, if you're booking a flight to Dubai and have the option the same day for a Boeing 777 or an A380 for pretty much the same price, well, I know which one I'd prefer. Emirates A380 strategy showcases the hub and spoke model done right. By funneling global traffic through Dubai, they can routinely fill A380s to London, New York, Sydney, etc., combining passengers from dozens of originating cities onto one large aircraft. And that's how Emirates made the A380 work while others struggled. And with the current resurgence, airlines that once balked at the Super Jumbo are effectively following Emirates' lead on key routes. So, as you might have noticed, most of the A380s you see flying today is often sporting an Emirates livery. The airline operates more of them than the next 5 airlines combined. And really, without that airline, the A380 might have never even got off the ground. Now, there is another factor in the A380's comeback that is a little bit harder to quantify, but also hard to ignore. passenger nostalgia and preference. Simply put, a lot of travellers just love the A380. It's a bit of an aviation icon, the last of the giants, and many avgeeks, aviation enthusiasts, go out of their way to book flights on the A380s, treating it as a special experience. Why? For one, the cabin is exceptionally spacious and quiet during flight, and I've had the pleasure of experiencing this a few times. The A380's main deck is wider than that of the Boeing 777s, which means that even in economy, the seats and aisles can be a smidge more generous. Its takeoffs and landings are eerily smooth, and the aircraft's sheer size even tames turbulence to an extent. The A380 also represents a bit of a golden age of travel throwback, with its grand staircase and the sheer audacity of the whole thing. There's a bit of a romance to it. The same way that people felt about flying with Pan Am on the 747 in its prime, they feel about the A380 now. So to conclude, why is the A380 back? For now. In a nutshell, because circumstances conspired to make the world briefly look the way that Airbus hoped it would back in the early 2000s. Travel demand rebounded dramatically, airline hubs got busier than ever, and new jets didn't arrive quickly enough. So suddenly big planes had a role to play again. The A380 was in the right place at the right time the second time around. The machine built for a pre-2008 global travel boom found its moment of usefulness in a post-2020 travel boom. However, before we declare the Super Jumbo's renaissance, we need to add a pinch of realism. The current A380 resurgence is likely a mid-term bubble, rather than a permanent new era. Airlines and manufacturers are still firmly focused on smaller, more efficient twin-engine jets for the future. The Boeing 747's farewell in 2023, the last one being delivered to Atlas Air, ending a 54-year production run, underscores that jumbo jets are indeed still a dying breed. Over the next decade, as new planes like Boeing's 777X and Airbus's own A350-1000 will eventually finally arrive in numbers, so we'll see those A380s retired again. Many airlines have only bought back a portion of their A380 fleets and remain non-committal about the long term. But for the foreseeable future, the A380 will continue to grace the skies on prime routes, acting as big, comfortable and quiet workhorses where it makes sense. Emirates' mega fleet guarantees that A380s will be flying well into the 2030s, and who knows, maybe by then the pendulum swings yet again. If the A380 story proves anything, it's that aviation is cyclical and also full of surprises. As we gaze up at that hulking double-decker flying overhead, we're reminded that in business, and therefore in aviation business, yesterday's flop can become today's flying gem. All it takes is the right conditions and a little bit of luck. The Airbus A380's comeback may or may not last, but it's already secured its legacy as the plane that refused to fade quietly into the history books. For now, the Queen of the Skies has a worthy successor in the King of the Skies, and that king is enjoying an unexpected encore. Hey everyone, if you enjoyed this slightly different style of funny business video, please give the video a like and also consider subscribing as well. A like especially and a comment helps a lot. So comment below with your thoughts. Have you ever flown the A380 or a similar aircraft? Do you have thoughts on this subject? Please let us know. And would you go out of your way to experience an A380? I've deliberately picked some flights over others that were similar prices just because they were on an A380, and it is one hell of an experience. Now, click over here to see a video that YouTube has decided to fly you over to next.